Good evening. Thank you all for coming. I'll begin with opening the meeting formally at 7:05. All members are present, and we'll start with the transmitting of Treasury warrants 31, 31A, 32, and 32A. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Made and seconded. Anything further? All in favor? It's unanimous. And we'll move to the approval of the minutes of November 13, 2012, and November 26, 2012. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve both sets of minutes as written.
Second.
Made and seconded. All in favor? It's unanimous. Our first agenda item this evening is with Joseph M. Gleason of Verizon New England, Inc., and it's regarding a public hearing on request of Verizon New England, Inc. and Reading Municipal Light Department to remove one pole and place one pole on Lord's Court. Good evening, Mr. Gleason.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Joseph Gleason. I am a right-of-way agent with Verizon New England, Inc., office located at 20 Shattuck Road in Andover. The petition before the board this evening, Mr. Chairman, is a fairly simple one, at least in theory. It comes to us as a butter request. There is an existing pole on Lord's Court on the southerly side of Lord's Court. It's designated as pole 440/5. The property owner whose property abuts that pole location has brought to the attention of Verizon that there is an aerial encumbrance that's being caused by that pole location insofar as service to the abutting property designated as 901 Lord's Court is coming off of that pole, crossing aerially across his property, and then into the abutting property. So our engineer has looked at this and has, in consultation with RMLD, determined that the best way to alleviate this aerial encroachment would be a 13-foot easterly relocation of the pole to an area that is right on the property line. So that way there would be no further, it would alleviate the aerial encumbrance. That being said, the town of Wilmington has brought to my attention that the abutter at 901 Lord's Court apparently had been in communication with the town and had expressed some concern about this pole relocation and the impact that it would have on her property. I know that this individual had spoke to my manager at Verizon. I actually spoke to this woman as well. She intimated she would not be able to be here this evening, and I said in fairness that I would express to the board her concerns. Now, I don't want to characterize her concerns as an outright objection. She didn't say that to me. She didn't say that she'd filed any written objections with the town. But she did say, she said, look, I bought my property 20 years ago at this location, didn't have a pole in front of it, and I think she would leave the rest to your own imagination in that regard. I said that, well, our intention was not to place the pole in front of your property, but to place it along the property line. In reviewing the site, this is an area that has a, between these two properties, also has a common, a collective mailbox configuration there, so I guess it's, and this may be some sort of special subdivision there, so they have one location where all the mail comes in. So the pole will be placed essentially right next to this common mailbox area. I don't want to impose my own feelings on anybody's observations. It doesn't look like to me that it would be too much of a visual impact on the property. It is right on the property line. It does alleviate the encroachment, and it is something that we do as a matter of course where customers request same. In that regard, I'll leave it up to the discretion of the board how to vote on this. Thank you.
If I could, before going to the board and the audience, could you just run it by us again what was the impetus for your submitting this petition?
Yeah, this is
I'm not clear on that.
Yeah, this is what we call a customer request. This is not something. This came to a bit of a surprise to the, and I'll say objecting abutter for lack of a better term, but this is not something that's unusual. A lot of times where we have customers who have some issues relative to a pole location. For example, maybe they're expanding their home, or they're building out a garage and they're going to design a driveway at a particular location, or they're doing some construction work or something. They can come to us and they'll say, look, if you can, is it possible to relocate that pole 10 to 15 feet this way, 10 to 15 feet that way, to help me put in my new driveway, to put in my new garage, to put on my new addition and what have you. And I'd like to think that where possible, Verizon and RMLD like to accommodate. So in this particular case, this isn't really any sort of build-out. It just happened to be that the property owner brought to our attention. He says, hey, look, you know, you've got service coming across my property, servicing the abutting property. That's an aerial encroachment. In these particular cases, what we normally do is we either A, secure an aerial easement, which I don't think I've secured since William Jefferson Clinton was in office, and or we just move the pole. So in this particular case, we're going to ask for permission to move the pole.
Okay. And I'm not hearing any specific plans that the requesting party has for their property other than it's encroaching the aerial space of their property.
That's correct. And
At least that it's been expressed.
Right. And in that particular case, and this actually came up in my conversation with the abutter, she was asking who's paying for this. Looking at the work order here, this is an internal Verizon matter, but I look at the work number here, and it tells me that this is a Verizon cost. So what will happen is that Verizon will go out and say, look, when we put this pole in, we probably should have had it right on the property line. We didn't do it. That's on us. We'll move it on our dime.
Okay.
So it's at our cost.
Okay. Comments or questions from the board, or should I go to the audience first? It's the pleasure of the board.
I don't really have a question per se. I think what I'm hearing is generally there's not a dramatic change in the positioning of the pole, except that it's an improvement. So I guess we'll call this person the complaining resident said that she wasn't really excited about the new location of the new pole, but the new location is actually better even for her than the presence of the old pole, is it not?
That's correct, and
Okay.
I explained that to her. And I think when you look at a plan like this, you 13 feet, you think, well, that's a big move. But when you actually go out and look at it in the field, it's really a slight move over. And as I said, it's going right next to these mailboxes there. And I was frank with her. I said, look, I'll be out. I'll take a look. If it's right in front of your house, I will make sure to bring this to the attention of the board. It really isn't. It's right on the property line where it ideally should have been when that subdivision was first constructed.
Thank you. That's my only question.
Yes.
Just as a point of clarification, is it to provide service to this woman that you're referencing?
Yeah, that's the problem that we have, because the encroachment on the abutting property is the service to the complaining parties, or the complaining party's property. So when you go out, even to the naked eye, you can see it. The pole is right in front of the gentleman who's asked us to move it, and you can see it clearly running across what looks to be his property into the property at 901 Lord's Court. So again, this is something that we would normally do, say, hey, that's on us. That shouldn't happen. We don't encroach on anybody's property unless we get the appropriate easements or rights. So we'll move it on our dime right to the property line and have the service coming that way, so nobody's property is encroached aerially or otherwise.
Understood. Thank you.
And just Mr. Chairman, it would have been ideal if all parties were here showing somewhat interest, but evidently it's on the property line, so fair is fair, and I don't see it being an issue. If it's on the property line, no one can really complain about it, if that's what you're saying.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I don't have an issue with that.
Okay, questions or comments from the audience? This is a public hearing, so if anybody has any comment, you have the right to be heard. I don't see anybody indicating that they want to speak. Questions, comments, or a motion from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we grant the request to Verizon as said in the appointment under the agenda.
Made and seconded. Anything further? All in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman.
Chairman. Thank you. Thank you.
3 copies to be signed.
Okay, yeah, we'll take care of that. Okay, our next scheduled appointment is with Diane T. Cutts, doing business as Sunrise Kitchen, regarding a request to obtain a common victual license for property located at 355 Middlesex Avenue. Is Ms. Cutts here, or Mr.? Good evening. Good evening. Is it Mr. Cutts? Yep. Good evening, Mr. Cutts. If you could, we're in receipt of your application, so we have the required information before us, but perhaps you could just generally let the audience or anybody else who might be watching let us know what your plans are.
Yeah, we came to ask for a common victuals license. For the last 22 years, we've been running Sunrise Bagels over in North Reading. We've, I think, been a good neighbor in the North Reading community, but we had an opportunity, both because of our lease running out over there, and a good opportunity to come over to Wilmington, which is closer to our home in Woburn, over at the Channel Building. We're looking to put in what they call a fast casual type of restaurant in the Channel Building near the registry. It would feature primarily sandwiches, soups, salads, some baked goods, paninis, and snack-type items. I don't know what other detail I can help you with.
I think that certainly does the trick in terms of the information we need. And just for informational purposes, the Channel Building you're referring to, a lot of folks know that's where the Registry of Motor Vehicles is.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Questions or comments from the board?
No, I think we do see that there are recommendations for approval from Health and Safety, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. There's a recommendation from the Director of Health, Shelley Newhouse, to grant approval, and the building inspector indicates that the use is allowed in general business zone, so there are no building zoning issues.
Anything else up here? Questions or comments from the audience? Seeing none, do we have a motion from the board?
I'll make a motion to grant the victual license.
Second.
Presented.
Made and seconded. Anything further? All in favor? It's unanimous.
Good luck.
Congratulations. Good luck.
Good luck to you.
Good luck.
Welcome.
to town. Thank you. Our next scheduled appointment is with Brian Kane, Wilmington Little League, and it's regarding a request to conduct a parade on Saturday, April 20th, from Town Common to Rotary Park in conjunction with opening day ceremonies. Good evening. How are you?
Good, how about you?
Doing great, thanks.
Well, with 2 feet of snow on the ground, most people aren't thinking about a Little League parade, but we are. This will be our 5th annual parade, scheduled for April 20th, with a rain date of April 21st. The players and coaches will leave the 4th of July parking lot at 9:30 a.m. sharp, and will proceed down Church Street to Rotary Park. Once everyone is at the park, we have a number of introductions and speakers before our opening day game between the White Sox and the Red Sox this year. We also take great pride in honoring our local veterans. Lou's always been great with getting a couple veterans to throw out the first pitch for us. Kiwanis will be there serving free hot dogs to all the players in the parade. And the Wilmington Minutemen have also participated every year. It's a real community event. I know you've all been there. Many of the players in the audience tonight will be there. And, it's a great event. We really appreciate the support of this board and the support of the town. And, we look forward to having it again.
Very good. Questions, comments from the board? I'll just like to say that since the league has reinstated that tradition the last, did you say 5 years? It's been
This will be
5
the
years
5th,
already?
yeah.
Since you've reinstated that tradition, it's been a great event every year. Look forward to it.
Yeah, I agree with the chairman. It's been, I can't believe it's the 5th one as well. And you guys always do a wonderful job of promoting the kids and the whole Little League program. And looking forward to being involved in this year.
I think it's all been said. Thank you for being
Okay.
here.
Do we have a motion from the board?
Will this have to include allowing the use of the 4th of July parking lot? Or is that all inclusive?
I think we're okay just to grant the request as set forth on the agenda, and then any of the details that might be affected will be squared away.
Okay, so
Make
moved.
sense?
Second?
Made and seconded. Anything further? All in favor? It's unanimous.
You did say free hot dogs.
Free hot dogs. We'll save one for you. Thank you. Hope to see you all there.
Thank you again. Our next scheduled agenda item actually combines three different groups that we want to recognize as a board and as a town. It's the recognition of the Pop Warner A and B team cheerleaders and coaches, and the recognition of the Pop Warner C football team and coaches for their recent successes. In addition to the successes that we want to acknowledge tonight, we also like to keep our average attendance rate up, so we do these every once in a while. If I could, I'd like to, in the hopes that we recognize each one of the individuals who's participated, it's my hope to have the manager read off the names of all of the individuals that we want to recognize, and I will stand in front of the table and give a certificate to each name that we call, and I will try to set aside the certificates for anybody who couldn't make it this evening, and we'll make sure that we work together to get them in their hands. So if we could divide them up into the three squads, the A cheerleaders, the B cheerleaders, and the C football team, we'll take them in those groups, and hopefully get a chance to get a photograph with each of those groups. So Jeff, if I could take the certificates, and you use the list, I will welcome each one of these folks as they come up. Let's start with the
All right. A-team cheerleaders. First, we have Christina Armada. Next, we have Aaron Campbell. Gina Davey. Samantha DeChara. Ashley DeSidu. Jennifer DeVito. Marissa Jackson. Logan McDonald. Jamie Murray. Caitlin Newton. Kendra Rancetta. Wow, batting 1,000 here. Ashley Rooney. Michaela Russell. Abigail Shedd. Katie Thompson. Gabriela Torres. Helena Walker. Head coach Deborah Smith. Team parent Karen Newton. Student demonstrator Bianca Carlson. Student demonstrator Ellie Silva. Ellie Silva. And Associate Chair Janine Hersom.
Take 2 rows. Ladies step out, adults behind. Ladies step out, adults behind. And anybody from the board jump in quick. Ladies take it in. Ladies take it in. Show me the jump into that picture. Here we go. Let's go. Whatever. 1, 2, 3. One more. Good idea. 1, 2, 3.
No, not on that one.
I didn't,
This was the same invitational only B team, correct?
yes. That's the B team. Want to just read the first?
Yes. And I'm not ashamed to say that I often make mistakes, but I try not to make the same mistake twice. And I neglected to tell everybody what the championship was. So for the B team cheerleaders, I'll be sure to read this. It's in recognition of the exceptional performance as a member of the Wilmington Pop Warner B team cheerleading squad in the 2012 New England Regional Champions Level 2 Small, and it's for second place National Cheer and Dance. So that's the B team.
Caitlin Aker. Samantha Belmonte. Kennedy Burnett. Ashley Connors. Allison Kern. Emily Eckert.
Wait.
Carly Jordan. Maeve Joseph. Brittany Laffarello. Jocelyn Valenti. Alexa Williams. Gina Zaccanini. And head coach Lauren Guthrie.
Just 5 of you ladies, come forward. Okay, never mind. You guys take a knee right there. Take a knee right there. Let me see your certificates. Show them to me. Let's see them. Wait, what? Okay, let's go. Don't be able to stay. We'll do it all. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Stay there.
Come on.
All right, the next certificate for the C football team reads that in recognition of your exceptional performance as a member of the Wilmington Pop Warner C football team, 2012 Division and Eastern Massachusetts champions. Congratulations to the C team.
Kyle Bolus. Andrew Brendenberg. Ryan Brewer. Brett Chisholm. Mark Companesca. I'm going to get this one wrong. Companesca. Did I get that right? Yeah. Okay. Mark? Okay, not here. Michael Daly. Michael DeCharm. Joseph DeMullen. Nolan Fitzgerald. Justin Frazier. Blake Hiltz. Braden Hiltz. Frank Irizuri. John Kenny Jr. Kyle Kenyon. Nicholas Coleman. Peter Morano Jr. Patrick McAndrew. Kyle Penny. Timothy Rivers Jr. Colin Rooney. Michael Smolensky. Thomas Stroh. Andrew Sullivan. Head coach Gerald Sullivan. Assistant coach Frank Izuri. Assistant coach John Kenny. Assistant coach Peter Morano. Team parent Margaret Smolinski. And equipment manager Robert Jones.
Once you guys just take a knee right there. There you go. Now slide in behind if you would. Hold those certificates in front of you so I can see them. Let's see them. Let's see those certificates. Hold them in front of you guys. Let's see them so I can see them. There we go. Here we go, 1, 2, 3. We'll do a couple more. Stay right there, do not move.
Doing good, thanks.
Boy, you really know how to keep them in. don't you?
Yeah.
Can we do the room line?
Thank you, Deb. Yeah, can you please? Our next scheduled agenda item is scheduled for 7:45, and although I see Attorney Peterson here, who is the representative at the hearing, at the meeting for that 7:45 agenda item, why don't we move to communications nonetheless for the next 5 minutes or so, and then we'll return to our agenda items. Mr. Hull?
Under communications, the first item that we have is a memorandum to the board regarding the Yentile Farm reuse survey results. And it indicates in part the prevailing opinion appears to suggest that the space should not be used predominantly by organized sporting groups in Wilmington. Over half of the respondents expressed interest in seeing the area used for open space, with nearly 63% very interested or extremely interested in picnic or pavilion areas located on the property. Over 75% of respondents identified walking or jogging trails as opportunities they would strongly desire to have provided. This sentiment for a more broad-based use of the property is confirmed by the fact that over 40% of respondents would like to see the Yentile Farm property developed by, quote, creating more recreational activities for people of all ages, end quote. Our respondents were also given the opportunity to offer individual comments or concerns about the development of the property. These opinions have been categorized in several major groupings. Common themes reflected in this comment included desire to create a space similar to the Ipswich River Park in North Reading, discourage use of space for organized sports, concern over safety and traffic related to the intersections at Cross Street and Main Street and Cross Street and Lowell Street, and the desire for more field space. Members of the Yentile Farm Committee are preparing a status report and will deliver that to the board at an upcoming meeting.
Jeff, at that meeting, will we, that would be the appropriate time for us to ask questions specific to some of the data that was in this report? Is that a reasonable?
I think so,
maybe
because
attend?
we'll have members of the committee here to both present and as well as address questions.
Good. We'll look forward to that. Thank you.
Also, we have correspondence from the Massachusetts School Business Authority. This is with respect to the North Intermediate School funding that the town is seeking. The letter reads, "I am pleased to report that the Board of the Massachusetts School Building Authority voted to approve the proposed accelerated repair project for the town of Wilmington to replace the windows at the North Intermediate School. The board approved an estimated maximum total facilities grant of $705,182, which does not include any funds for potentially eligible owners or construction contingency expenditures. In the event the MSBA determines that any owners and/or construction contingency expenditures are eligible for reimbursement, the maximum total facilities grant for the proposed project may increase to $737,374. The final grant amount will be determined by the MSBA based upon a review and audit of all project costs incurred by the town in accordance with the MSBA's regulations, policies, and guidelines and the project funding agreement. The final grant amount may be in an amount less than $705,182. Pursuant to the terms of the MSBA Accelerated Repair Program, the town has 90 days to acquire and certify local approval for an appropriation and all necessary local votes or approvals showing acceptance of the cost, site type, scope, and timeline for the proposed project. Upon receipt of the certified votes demonstrating local approval, the MSBA and the town will execute a project funding agreement which will set forth the terms and conditions pursuant to which the town will receive its grant from the MSBA. Once the project funding agreement has been executed by both parties, the town will be eligible to submit requests for reimbursement for the proposed project costs to the MSBA. We will be contacting you soon to discuss these next steps in more detail, but in the meantime, I wanted to share with you the board's approval of the proposed project for the replacement of the windows at the North Intermediate School and the board's authorization to execute a project funding agreement for the proposed project. Signed, John K. McCarthy, Executive Director. Just by point of information, we've had some discussions with representatives from MSBA about this project, as you know, and one of the items that was raised was the requirement that given the town meeting being the May 4th, which is slightly beyond the 90-day timeline, we would require a dispensation, if you will, on the 90-day timeline, or a strict reading of that, which they've indicated will be the case. So it's my expectation we'll pursue this at the town meeting, and subject to authorization for the additional funding, then we would be eligible to go forward.
And at that, we will return to our agenda items. Our 7:45 appointment is with Robert G. Peterson, Esquire, regarding a request for a confirmatory deed for property located at 11 Faneuil Drive. Good evening, Counselor.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. What I originally had requested was a confirmatory deed for a piece of property at 11 Faneuil Drive in Wilmington. It was a title examination that I had been involved in. The original deed from the town of Wilmington to the former owner of the property contained two restrictions. One, which would have prohibited the subdivision of the property into any type of subdivision whatsoever. The original parcel contained an 80 by 50 area, which was 4,000 square feet, which contained a cottage-style dwelling. Those owners purchased from the town back in the 70s an additional parcel containing 10,000 square feet. And in that deed, there were two restrictions. One prohibited any type of subdivision in the future of the property, which is fine. The total square footage of the property is only 14,000 square feet. The second restriction prohibited the use of the property for anything other than an extension of the existing dwelling, for any type of conforming use. What that deed didn't take into consideration was that at some point in time, that dwelling would probably come down. It was an old cottage, and that's exactly what's happened. And the two restrictions in the deed remained. I had contacted Mr. Ross at Deutsch Williams and proposed a confirmatory deed which would have re-up the prohibition in the deed against subdivision, which is what he was concerned about, but would have released the restriction prohibiting the use of the property to anything other than an extension of the then existing dwelling, which has now been demolished. What he proposed, in which I am in agreement with, is a waiver of restriction and agreement, which is what you have in front of you this evening. What it does is it waives the restriction in that original deed, which would have restricted the use of the town property to anything other than extension of the then existing dwelling, which has now been demolished. It also reinstates the prohibition against subdivision. The property couldn't have been subdivided anyway. It was only 14,000 square feet in total, and it was in an R10 zone, but it didn't have the area to subdivide one way or another. But what Mr. Ross was concerned about is that the restrictions may have expired, and it's the goal of the document in front of you this evening to reinstate those restrictions, which will carry forward for a minimum of another 30 years. So what it does is, very simply, it allows for the demolition of the existing house, a construction of a conforming house on that same lot, and reinstates the restrictions which would prohibit any type of subdivision of the property in the future. And I'm somewhat surprised that I'm the first guy to come before the board with this request, because in the 60s and the 70s, there were probably hundreds of pieces of town-owned property that was sold with the same restriction. And I'm sure a lot of those dwellings, if they haven't been taken down, in the near future will be taken down. So you'll probably see me, matter of fact, I got another very similar title in today, which got the same restriction on it. When the original parcels were conveyed, they were basically sold for low value to be attached to the purchaser's existing parcel. It was the town's desire to make sure that whoever bought it never subdivided it, which is fine. That's a legitimate restriction. But the second restriction, which prohibited the use of the property for anything other than an extension of the then existing dwelling over time, has now become obsolete.
Questions or comments from the board?
I don't have an issue with the request.
Thank you.
Anything down
No, I
here?
appreciate the clarification on it. I read through the documentation, and it was a little fuzzy, to be honest with you, so you've helped me clarify what the request is about. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
With that, do we have a motion from the board?
I make a motion that we grant the request.
Second?
Made and seconded. Anything further? All in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before I leave, I'd like to make an unsolicited comment, and I'd like to commend the DPW for the outstanding job they did over the weekend, in my street in particular, on 2 different occasions. As I was standing in my driveway, shovel in hand, the gentleman, one of them was a private contractor and one of them was a town employee. They both stopped to apologize in advance if they dumped snow at the end of my driveway. And when they were cleaning up today, I noticed on my way home from work that they had taken time to, after they finished moving the snow back, they had actually taken time to clear every driveway in the street before they left of the snow they had deposited there. So I think that the DPW should be proud of the job that they did. And if you live in a cul-de-sac, I know that Mr. McCoy does, and I do as well. I live at the end of a 1,300-foot cul-de-sac, and at the end of a snowstorm, that's where most of it ends up. And although most of it is in front of my house, they took extra time to make sure they didn't block any driveways. And I offer my commendation as a resident to Mr. Onyusite and all of his drivers, both public and private, for a job well done. So.
Mr. Chairman, I agree, and I'll tell you what, if you can talk to them, send them down my neighborhood, that would be appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Peterson.
And I think we can move to our review of annual town meeting warrant articles submitted by petition.
Before you, we have a number of petition articles. The first being a request to purchase town-owned land, map 6, parcel 18, portions of lot 180, 181, 182, actually a portion of 183. Petitioner is Mark Nelson. Also, another request to purchase town-owned land, map 6, parcel 18, lots 177, 178, 179. Also, petitioner is Mark Nelson. We have another request to purchase town-owned land, map 6, parcel 16. This is Walnut Street. The petitioners are James Walsh and Dina Kulza. Request for a rezoning from residential 60 to residential 20, map 10, parcels 5 and 6, Hopkins Street, and map 10, parcel 5A, Serafina Way. The petitioner is James Castellano. Request to purchase town land, map 80, parcel 42B, Lawrence Street, Arena Watney. Request to amend the inhabitant bylaws, Chapter 5, Public Regulations, by adding a new section regulating fences. The petitioner is George Lingenfelter. A request for a rezoning from residential 60 to residential 10, map 11, parcels 42, 55, 44A, and 41, 3, 5, and 7, Dorchester Street, in parcel 52, Hopkins Street. The petitioners are Mark and Lisa Esposito. A request to rezone from residential 60 to residential 20, map 84, parcels 10 and 15 on Royal Street, Douglas Marsubian. Request to purchase town land, map 52, parcel 34 on Central Street. The petitioner is Jonathan Koulis. A request to amend the zoning bylaw, section 3.8.9, minimum space permit criteria. Aereo Realty LLC is the petitioner. And then the final request is a request to rezone from general business to residential 20, map 41, parcels 128, 128A, 128B, and 30F, Dublin Ave. The petitioner is Mary Krikorian.
Okay, and at that, we will resume our communications. Mr. Hull?
We have correspondence from the Massachusetts School Building Authority. This was directed to Charles Lyons, the superintendent at the Shawshene Valley Technical High School. This is with regard to their application for assistance to replace a boiler. And the agreement talks about essentially the process that they need to go through in terms of signing the project funding agreement and the various other legal documents that they need to sign off on in order to begin their project. Just by way of review, their project cost for this boiler replacement is a little over $1 million. The MSBA will be funding a minimum of $497,510 up to a maximum of $520,039. That's with a contingency. And as I mentioned, this document instructs them on how to proceed. We have correspondence from the Commonwealth. This is an act that was recently passed by the legislature that sets out the allowance for the elections. As you know, we have both a primary and a general election to fill the vacated seat of Senator John Kerry, or former Senator John Kerry. This legislation allows for communities to change their local election dates in order to potentially accommodate the special election and schedule their local election on the same date.
And my expectation was to publicize that at this meeting and bring it to the board's attention if the board hadn't already been privy to that information, and then certainly we can take that up in at a future meeting date that would give people plenty of notice as to what our intentions are in the next town election and relative to the timing with the special primary.
Next is correspondence from the MBTA, or to the from the MBTA Advisory Board. The director there, Paul Regan. There's a great deal of transit news in Massachusetts since we last met. There is a new general manager of the MBTA, the release of a new study outlining transportation needs of the Commonwealth, and the governor has proposed sweeping changes in the way transit and transportation is funded. Over the next week, the advisory staff will be providing you with information and analysis of these proposals. Also, we hope that you can join us at our next meeting, which is scheduled for Tuesday, February 19th at 9:30, Conference Room 1, State Transportation Building, 2nd floor. This is in Boston. The Massachusetts Municipal Association has sent a notice to local officials with regard to upcoming local legislative breakfast meetings. As you know, these meetings happen periodically during the course of the year. The intent being to get our legislative delegation and local leaders together to talk about some of the pressing issues of the day. Certainly Chapter 90 funding, which is the funding for road construction, will be one of the topics. The retirement and public employee health insurance benefits issue, the unfunded liability that exists there, that's another topic of discussion, as well as, I'm sure, a number of other issues, including state aid. The meeting dates, the one that's closest to Wilmington is in Andover, and that meeting is set for March 8th. If there's any interest, please let me know, and we'll have people registered. We have correspondence from Minuteman Senior Services. This is directed to the board. The National March for Meals campaign is gearing up, and Minuteman Senior Services is requesting your active participation in making this annual event a true success. March for Meals is a national campaign initiated and sponsored by the Meals on Wheels Association of America to raise awareness of the senior hunger, recruit new volunteers, and increase local funding. In March 2012, over 1,500 state representatives, mayors, selectmen, and other town officials across the country showed their support for the Meals on Wheels program by choosing a day to join the regular driver and deliver meals to seniors in their own communities. We are inviting you to participate in 2013 March for Meals by taking an hour or two out of your day to show your support and deliver a meal to a senior in need of assistance. The Meals on Wheels program is one of over 20 programs we offer to help keep people independent and is an invaluable service to homebound seniors without family nearby to assist in the preparation of meals or to check in on their daily routine. When you greet a senior with a welcomed hot meal, you will have an immediate understanding of the far-reaching impact of the service. The nutritive value is only the beginning. The driver's daily contact with the people on their route often results in caring rapport and an awareness of the changes that may indicate the need for additional intervention. During these special outings, there will be photo opportunities, and press releases will be prepared and distributed to local media. Whether you have been part of this important link to the community in the past or are participating for the first time, we thank you for your continued support of the March for Meals campaign. A volunteer from my office will be contacting you shortly to determine your availability and find a day that works for you. For additional information, you may contact the March for Meals campaign. Signed, Joan Butler, Executive Director. We have correspondence from Verizon, which is an annual requirement that they provide us with their forms, Form 500, which documents the number of complaints that they receive from individuals. Just briefly, it references, in this case, a total of 40 complaints equipment related essentially, for the most part. And then we have a similar document from Xfinity, again, the Form 500, which under state law that cable providers are required to file. And they provide also their listing of complaints, which consisted of billing and equipment issues, installation issues. Final item on correspondence, actually two more pieces. One is directed to the chair of the board. On behalf of the Wilmington Recreation Commission, I am requesting permission to conduct the annual Easter egg hunt on the town common on Saturday, March 30, 2013 at 2 p.m. This fun family event is a sight to behold. Volunteers will blanket the town common with candy-filled eggs. Hundreds of children will circle the perimeter of the common and will rush to fill their Easter baskets once the starting signal is given. We cordially invite members of the Board of Selectmen to join the festivities as spectators or volunteers. Volunteers should be at the town common at 1:15 p.m. In the event of rain or poor ground conditions, the event will be held in the high school cafeteria. The event is traditionally an overwhelming success. With your support, we look forward to continuing this time-honored event.
Okay, do we have any questions, comments, or a motion by the board?
Motion to grant the request?
Second.
Made and seconded. Anything further? All in favor? It's unanimous.
And the final item under correspondence is a request from Leonard Melvoin. I would like to request the use of the Wilmington Town Common for a unity rally on Sunday, April 7, 2013 at 1:30 p.m. The rally will take place for approximately 60 to 90 minutes and will involve all the churches in the community. Thank you in advance for your attention. Leonard Melvoin.
Have we received any additional information on that since that correspondence came in and we had
No.
talked briefly?
No.
Okay. I wonder if the board would see fit to table this request until such time as we can get a little bit more information regarding the request. Any objections to that?
No, not at all.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with that, and, but I just want to say that the gentleman that put this in, I have spoke with him on this, and it was kind of in response to the paintings, the vandalism that was done at a couple churches, 3 churches in town and some else around town, so this was kind of a thing they come up with to pull some unity together, and that's all I can really say about that. You might want to talk to Mr.
Yeah,
Melvin.
based on the timing, that was certainly our sense as to what it was about, but it might make sense, given that the request is for a Sunday in April. I think we have some time here to get a little bit more information and act on it.
I, too, have no objection to waiting to get more details. I spoke to Mr. Melvoni yesterday briefly, and he mentioned that he had submitted this request, and I said, oh, that's great, I look forward to hearing more about it. But again, to echo what you said, Mr. Semaglia, it's my understanding is that there's no intent to, it's not a festival atmosphere. There won't be any cooking, there won't be anything for sale. It's really just a show of unity for all faiths or for all people throughout the community to sort of gather together against that kind of activity, I guess the tragic events that happened last weekend. So, again, because we have the luxury of time, I think it makes sense for us to get and I certainly have no objection to gathering more information.
Okay, at that, do we have a motion to table the request?
So moved.
Second.
Made and seconded, all in favor? It's unanimous. And if we could, try and proactively reach out to Mr. Melvone. Okay, public comment? Mr. McDonald, you don't have the floor for public comments. Please take a seat. Please take a seat, sir. Please take a seat, sir. Officer, if I could. You have not been recognized, sir, and I've asked you to please speak. Please refrain from speaking. You do not have the floor. Please withdraw from the meeting. Please withdraw from the meeting. Please withdraw from the meeting, sir. Please withdraw from the meeting, sir. You do not have the floor. You have not been recognized. I do not intend to recognize you. Please withdraw from the meeting, sir.
What, can you ask why you didn't recognize? We're not going to do that now. Can you do that later on? Well, I think you're denying me my rights to free speech, and being a candidate for the Board of Selectmen, I believe I should have the opportunity to address the town and this board to inform them that.
Can I escort him out?
No problem. You have to do nothing right now. You can have a seat, or you can step up.
Thank you. What?
That's it.
Anybody else with any public comment?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just make a couple of comments. Certainly, as everybody knows, this past weekend, with the storm that we had, received a tremendous amount of snow, and I just want to publicly acknowledge the efforts of our number of departments, certainly our Public Works crews. They were out from 6:30 on Friday through about 4 in the afternoon on Saturday, pushing the snow off the street, clearing things out. They were back again on Sunday from 6:30 in the morning until 5, clearing out the walkways and the parking lots, the various public buildings, the schools. I think they did a tremendous job in light of the circumstances. Our public buildings crews, the custodians and the maintenance folks were out yesterday as well, clearing the walkways and entryways into the buildings. Also, as you know, we had a fire on Friday night, and again, I would like to express my sincere thanks to the fire personnel that dealt with some very difficult circumstances, both weather-wise and just given the close conditions that they were dealing with. So police as well were out dealing with a number of issues. Fortunately, I think all in all, things went very well with respect to the fire issue. It was thankful that we didn't have any injuries or fatalities. With regard to the road conditions, I think things are in very good shape at the moment. We still have some sidewalks to remove snow from, and certainly the banks need to be pushed back, and that's going to be an ongoing effort over the next several days. But I just want to extend my thanks to the various crews that were out there for a long stretch of time. Yes. Yes.
Anything else? Please, you've not been recognized, sir. Please refrain from interrupting the meeting. Thank you in advance. Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, no, I guess, Jeff, you kind of summarized what I was going to say. I really wanted to express my appreciation, just like Mr. Peterson did before. You know, these events, these snow events are few and far between and are pretty unusual when you get that much snow that fast. And so everyone really responded. Not only do I want to compliment all of the folks that have already been complimented, our employees and our contractors who are out working feverishly, but I also want to compliment the residents for their patience. You know, it's a difficult thing when you get a little cabin fevery, and I can speak for myself. By Sunday afternoon, I was kind of pulling my hair out, ready to go out and hit the streets. But the roads are a little narrow, and the banks are a little high, and you know, I haven't seen the accident reports, and I'm hoping that they're not bad. But generally, I feel like I haven't heard reports of folks going out there and acting senseless. I think folks have been respectful and helping each other out, and sometimes tough circumstances can bring out the best in people. And I witnessed that in my own neighborhood, just in some of the snow clearing. So, you know, from a negative or from a stressful situation, oftentimes come some very positives. Are we in open comments here now? Are we closing out?
Yeah,
or?
new business.
Yeah, right. So I also just wanted to take just a brief moment to at least recognize and articulate my own disgust in the vandalism. I don't want to overstate it. I don't want to keep on beating the dead horse, but the vandalism that occurred to the 3 churches that I know of, and I've heard various reports and suggestions that maybe there was some other spots as well, but it hasn't been substantiated or confirmed. Nevertheless, you know, I don't defy anyone their opportunity to have their opinion heard in the public square, to hand out pamphlets, or to create a website, or to use whatever legal means are available to all of us as Americans to have their opinion heard. But I was just so disgusted with the way that the vandalism was conducted. Vandalism in any way, shape, or form is always reprehensible, but in some strange way, I found it all the more disgusting that it happened at places of faith. So I just wanted to share that. Those are my feelings about it. I was enraged at the time that it happened. While my rage has sort of calmed, I maintain a sense of disgust over those events. That said, I also want to compliment the firefighters from various towns, certainly our Wilmington firefighters, but also all of the others that responded to that fire, as well as other events throughout the community that needed to be responded to while our men and women were actively working at the Avalon fire. And my thoughts and my prayers go out to the folks that were personally and directly affected by the fire. I'm sure we all feel that way. I guess lastly, I'll say in a positive light that this evening is a very positive night. I'm always encouraged or made to feel very positive when we at our meetings get to recognize the achievements of the young people of our community, as well as the volunteers, the coaches, the parents, the people that give of their time to help the young people. Obviously, I think we all agree that the young kids, the kids in our community are the future of our community, and by giving them a structure and helping them along, they achieve great things, both immediately in their activities and their cheering and their sports, but also it's good for their entire life. So it was very pleasing tonight to see how this all went and to recognize their achievements. And so thank you for your time. I appreciate that.
Officer, could you please have this gentleman removed? It's unnecessary. Thank you, officer.
So I agree with everything that Selectman Shampoo had to say. I wanted to thank residents for taking the time to complete the Yuntile Farm Committee survey that went out. I know the manager did outline the results in a memo to the board, and we will be talking about that at a future meeting. I think it's important that residents feel that they can participate in feedback for that, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity moving forward to give an update at a later date when we have the full assembly of the committee here. I would be remiss if I did not comment on DPW and just the town overall on the response for the storm. Obviously, we are all thinking of those that were affected at Avalon with the fire, and also to just in general with the hydrants, dryer vents, keeping them clear. I know that we've talked about snowbanks and children and elderly. We also want to be cognizant of our four-legged friends, and also to just to make sure that you have a second egress in your home. A lot of times people make sure they can get in the front door, but you need to be able to get out the back door. And I also wanted to comment to you, Selectman Shampoo, for providing a conference summary, as you indicated in the last meeting that you would do for us. I did take an opportunity to read that, and I appreciate the update. And lastly, I just wanted to compliment you as the chair of the meeting, Selectman Newhouse. Repetitively throughout the course of the last several meetings, you've had to not only present this agenda on behalf of the board and working in conjunction with the town manager, but you've had to deal with instances of what I would characterize, in my personal opinion, as flagrant disrespect. And I just want to commend your poise and finesse in dealing in public situations where perhaps your personal patience may have been tested, but you certainly always conduct yourself as a true professional, and I appreciate that. And I also want to commend the officer that just had to take action for displaying the same demeanor. So in closing, I want to certainly end on a positive note to say that I'm very proud of the Popwaner group as a whole. It's nice to have these positive occasions where we can recognize people for their positive contributions to the community, and tonight is no exception. So that's all I have at this time. Thank you.
I appreciate the generous word. I would simply say that I think that the board has demonstrated a degree of patience and tolerance that goes well above and beyond what should be expected of a board. And I think that people understand that patience and tolerance shouldn't be mistaken for indifference. None of us are indifferent to that conduct. We do what we have to do to continue on with the town business, and that's, I think, the compliments that you extended really should be extended to the entire board, but thank you. Anything down
I agree
here?
with everything that's been said over there tonight.
Yeah, just to touch base, and not to elaborate a little bit more, it's all been said, but just to, obviously, we had this 2 feet of snow, the storm. It's, you know, you don't see it that often. Obviously, we see it enough here in New England. And just to say, just to touch upon what the manager said, I mean, I plow my own restaurant. I was out there from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Friday night, and I can honestly say, Jeff, I agree. The main roads, Lowell Street, Main Street, they were cleared as best they could so travel could take place. I was actually in the eye of the storm, and I can honestly witness that. And another comfort level was I saw a cruiser. They're not always parked, as being said, at the police department. I saw police cruisers up and down Lowell Street and Main Street, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. That says something. It's a comfort level knowing that they're out there. And obviously, they're out there to look to see if someone's stranded, because there was a whiteout. You could not see 10 feet in front of your truck, not at all. And then again, getting up the next morning, and you saw the town. They did the best they could, and they did a great job, and they kept all the roads, those main roads, open at that time. And that meant a lot, and I just want to say that. And just to touch upon what Judy said, you know, I agree, Judy. This was a great night for these young kids in Wilmington. You always read about, and you always see on TV all the bad things that kids do, but when you have something positive, it means a lot. And I think this was a great night, and I think you've been doing a good job, Mike, as chairman. I told you privately, and I'll say it to you publicly, my wife said, geez, I thought Mike Newhouse really handled them well, and I've been watching the meetings because of what's going on here, and we don't want to talk about it and give any credit to that individual. But I told you, you won her over, so that's a positive thing.
Thank you.
All right.
At that, I did indicate to the members of the board that I would report back with the status of the high school project. This past Thursday night, the high school building committee had a meeting, and the purpose of the meeting was, I think, twofold. First, it was to understand the near final budget numbers. They're not 100% final budget numbers because we continue to negotiate with some subcontractors, which they're referred to as the non-trade subcontractors, and under the statutory scheme that we've proceeded with, we have the ability to negotiate with them. So we continue to do that to get the 100% guaranteed maximum price. With that said, as we've understood for months, and as was reinforced at this past Thursday night's high school building committee meeting, the town generally has good news and bad news. And certainly the bad news is that the delays that have been occasioned by the wetlands appeals, and we're all familiar with the appeals that we're talking about, have been extremely costly for the residents. They've been costly in terms of dollars, and I think just as importantly, if not more so, it's cost high school students an entire academic year in that new facility. And that's the kind of cost that we're, losing that 1 year in a new facility is something that we'll never be able to recover from. But the good news is, with respect to the financial losses, we are in a position to be able to proceed with the construction without an additional appropriation at town meeting. What that means from a practical standpoint is, without having to go back to the residents to appropriate additional funds, notwithstanding the increased cost to the project, we will not encounter additional delays with MSBA approvals. If we went back to town meeting, appropriated more money, that would have to go before MSBA, and that would create further delays. So that is good news. That is probably understated as good news. That's great news, and it really reflects successes on a number of levels. The other thing is that when we're proceeding with this project without an additional appropriation, it is in sum and substance the same project that was presented to the residents both before the ballot box vote and the town meeting vote back at the end of 2011. So we are going to be able as a town to deliver the same product in substance that we had talked about. As I had explained on January 10th, a couple of meetings ago, our design professionals have been warning us for quite some time that that costs have increased dramatically during the period of time that these appeals have been pending. Specifically, the Turner Construction Cost Index and the Engineering News Record. These are two indices that measure the costs in non-residential building construction market in the United States. As of the fourth quarter of 2012, the annual increase from the fourth quarter of 2011 was, as I had indicated at the last meeting, 2.55 to 2.6%. As I also had indicated at our January 10th meeting, our management team and design professionals have advised us that the Greater Boston construction industry and demographic typically tracks these indices, and they had expected that these increased costs would continue. And in fact, it appears that our design professionals and consultants have been correct. The bids for this contract have held true to that trend. Of course, it's hard to give some mathematical examples for all of the line items of the budget, because given those delays, we didn't have the opportunity to bid out the entire contract. But we did have the opportunity to get some bids for certain work last June, which give us an indication of what it's cost the town. I'd like to share some of that information with the board and with the general public. Since June of 2012, our site work and field turf installation costs have increased approximately $200,000. The cost of concrete-related work, for which we also had prices, has increased by about $30,000, and the subcontractor cost for structural steel work has increased by approximately $228,000. So just using those three numbers, which we did have hard numbers for last June, and we compare them to what our budget items are now, you're looking at a delta of about $458,000. Another example of the increased costs is the town sewer project, and I want to be clear that the town sewer project, from a financial standpoint, is a separate contract than the high school building project, but it is related in that we have appropriated money in order to construct the sewer, which will serve the new school. Through the negotiation process, our water and sewer commissioners and superintendent has been able to fix a price for the work to be done at $500,000. The exception to that is any increase which is attributable strictly to prevailing wage, which, as the board recognizes, is the state mandated rate for paying wages for that work. Just based on the increases in the prevailing wage, that contract has gone from $500,000 to $575,000. Everything else in that contract has stayed the same. And then, of course, our soft numbers have increased. When you have an architectural team, you have a project management team, you have a construction management team, the pre-construction phase of this project has been extended by about a year. And I don't think that there's anybody out there who doesn't recognize that when you pay those professionals for an extra year's worth of work, there's some added cost. Now, I don't want to get into the specific numbers on that, because the fact of the matter is the town will continue to negotiate with our own design team and consultants to try and minimize that cost. But going through some of these numbers, even without getting beyond the structural steel, you're talking maybe $700,000 in increases. So to think that, the increase to the rest of the trades is going to get up to the $1.5 million or better, that we all understand costs have increased in the last year is certainly reasonable. One of the things that I wanted to make sure we reported back to the town, though, is, folks may be asking the question, well, wait a minute, if we don't have all the numbers that we're basing this on, how are we, if we've increased by $1.5 million, how are we able to do this without going back to town meeting for an additional appropriation? And the reasons really are threefold. The first reason is because of sound contract administration. I mean, the reality is that at various stages in this process, we engage professionals to give us estimates. It happens at the conceptual stage and then at various design stages. The irony to me is that there is one individual in particular who has constantly appeared at meetings such as the Board of Selectmen, High School Building Committee, forums at the middle school, et cetera, and constantly takes issue with the fact that we're going with a construction manager at risk type of contract. And the fact of the matter is that if you had to nail down one thing, one decision that the town made that avoided the increase in costs from being catastrophic, it's by going with the construction manager at risk scenario. We got between $600,000 and $700,000 additional MSBA reimbursement for using that process. And if, when all is said and done and we look at all the budget numbers, I think we're all going to see that the non-trade subcontractors with whom our construction manager has been free to negotiate, we're going to find that a lot of those trades, most of those trades, ended up being giving us budget numbers that are less than our estimates, as opposed to the trade bids, which we're bound to take the lowest responsible bidder. Those are the budget line items that really increased over the course of the last year, for the most part, in accordance with those national trends and regional trends. So that's one piece of it that people need to understand. The town did it right. The town made the right decision. The other thing is we've just been lucky in some respects. While many budget line items and different trades escalated in much the way that we're talking about here, others didn't. And there's an offset. And, there's no accounting for that other than it helps to be lucky sometimes. And some of those bids just came in lower than we had anticipated. And then finally, there have been various what the architects like to refer to as value engineering steps throughout the course of this process. I like to think of what they call value engineering as common sense decisions. And long before any of these appeals were filed, the design team and construction management team went to work looking at various aspects of the conceptual design as it was brought through to 100% design, and looked at ways that we could save money and to do so in a way that wouldn't compromise the quality of the building that we're going to deliver. And just to give you a few of those examples, we had a substitution of a standard brick size, which the High School Building Committee voted to increase the size of that brick, which not only saved something to the order of $175,000, but also seemed to be just as aesthetically pleasing as the smaller brick. We had some roof screens that were eliminated simply because at various perspectives and locations in the building, you just didn't need them. And if you can envision the rendering of the high school that's been presented that has that mansard sloped roof cover, that's really a roof line that hides equipment that exists on the roof. So at various perspectives around the building, you just couldn't see that equipment anyways, and eliminating that from the budget, again, before these appeals even happened, saved us something to the order of about $900,000. And then there are other things, a number of decisions that were made by the High School Building Committee. But again, those are things that occur in the process. But I think it's important for people to understand a couple of things. Number one, when we talk about the cost, that cost is very real, it's substantiated, and it's, you can't sugarcoat it. It's bad news for the town. The upside is that decisions have been made throughout this process which have enabled us to overcome those additional costs. Granted, myself, I find it hard to believe we're going to be in a position like we were when we finished the middle school, where we come in $1 million under budget, and we're able to apply that money to some other educational initiative. We probably don't have that wiggle room anymore, but the fact of the matter is we've made it through the costs associated with those delays, and will not be going back to town meeting for another appropriation. So I appreciate your indulgence, and certainly if there are any questions, we'll have our team in at the appropriate time for an update, but I thought it important that when this information was being brought to light to the High School Building Committee this past Thursday, that I pass it along to the board.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just to touch upon what you said, simple fact is I think we all, in one way or another, did support the new middle school and a public safety building, and it was built without delays, on time and on budget. And you were right. We were able to bring back $1 million, go back into the general fund. I want people out there to realize, to think that these comments, well, it cost us a year delay, but really not costing us any money. Absolutely. It's going to cost $1 million plus, because those are monies that we would be given back in the general fund. Under the leadership of the new town manager, Jeff Hull, and Mike Harvey did a good job putting it together, and that's why we did it on time and on budget. But people need to realize that and just really draw that home. A year delay, and those, even though it's not going to cost, we don't have to go to a town meeting to get money out of free cash, because that's what we thought we were going to do. But those monies that those additional funds would, like you said, go back in the general fund, and that's money that goes back to the taxpayers. And we're not going to have that luxury. People need to realize that with the Wilmington so-called 10. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anything else?
Sorry.
Important dates, Mr. Hull.
Important dates. We have meeting tomorrow evening, the 12th, Finance Committee, Town Hall here, room 9, 7 p.m. We'll be considering the recreation, elderly services budget. I believe the library budget is going to be rescheduled. February 18th, town offices are closed for President's Day. February 19th, the Finance Committee will be meeting, again, room 9, Town Hall, to consider the Veteran Services and Historical Commission budget. February 25th is the next Board of Selectmen's meeting, here at 7 o'clock in room 9. And February 26th, the Finance Committee meeting, Town Hall, room 9, to consider the police, public safety, central dispatch, and fire.
We have a motion to adjourn. So moved.
Second?
Made and seconded, all in favor? Unanimous?
Very good.